Tonight we're going to do something a little bit different for us, something that we probably should have done way at the beginning of our journey here.
But probably couldn't have done well at the beginning, even before YouTube, as we can now, however many years we are into this.
Yeah, because what's that statement? If you knew now what you know then, or no?
Something like that.
If I knew then what I know now.
Yes.
Today we're going to talk about what our vision is for our homestead.
Kind of, what are we doing?
Yes, what are we doing? Because as many of you know, we've been going through, some thinking about changes and things like that on the homestead, which has led us to kind of go back to the beginning of why are we homesteading?
Which, before we go too far down this road, going back and sort of reevaluating things regularly, and it doesn't always have to be a really big exercise. It could be as simple as, hey, I didn't really like the way that kind of tomato grew, so I just stopped growing it.
Tomato.
But constantly reevaluating is probably something that's completely understated in the homesteading / growing your own food side of things, but it's a extremely useful tool and extremely useful exercise. Mm-hmm. But it can also get extremely complicated
and make you want to pull your hair out. It does
at times.
At times.
So I think the big thing for us, the big overarching theme, whatever you want to call it, really does go back to the term sustainable. But I've actually looked up I'm going to read them here, a couple of different, more generic definitions of what sustainable is. So one definition is able to continue at the same level for a period of time. Another definition is able to continue over a period of time. And the last definition, which is a little bit more specific to sort of environmental sustainability or being sustainable, is causing little or no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. So these all have very similar themes in you're looking at this sort of long term of keeping something going. So when you apply it in our minds to homesteading, growing your own food, gardening, whatever, you're producing food to eat, these very, very basic definitions really do sort of emphasize what sustainable is. You're trying to do it in a manner that you're able to do for a long period of time, with it causing the least amount of sort of impact. And of course, that's where it gets fun and complicated. That's the vision.
That's the word, I suppose. That's kind of the word that is influencing how our how our vision develops, because being completely sustainable, we know we're not setting unrealistic goals. We know that
being completely self-sufficient.
Yes, sorry.
You could be sustainable and not, hypothetically, in a theoretical sense, and not be self-sufficient, because being sustainable doesn't mean you have to be independent.
No.
You can rely on other people.
But you're trying to source those people that are doing stuff also in a sustainable manner.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which is where it can get a little tricky in that sense of where you're sourcing your grain, where you're sourcing...
But by looking at it from a sustainable perspective, going back to those definitions as opposed to a self-sufficient, that does take some pressure off. Not that we were ever trying to be self-sufficient per se, because there's a lot of areas you'd never be able to do it. Probably will be able to do it, and being self-sufficient is an amazing goal, but very, very difficult to do and to do well. But being sustainable is kind of one, in my opinion, our opinion, is one step down from that, and still worthwhile trying to pursue. It's
something that really every homestead should try to strive for, because in today's world, it is something that being good to the environment and trying to add to the system rather than detract from the system.
Well, or putting more load on it.
And there's a word for that, I'm sure.
These are all kind of, the one in particular was an environmental definition. So this still works for economics. And I think when you look at sustainable in terms of economics, that's an interesting one, because
it's a dangerous one. I don't know if it's interesting.
What's interesting about it is it's not suggesting growth. It's suggesting essentially coming to a balance where you almost flatline to a point that you can keep it going indefinitely, as opposed to having to put more money into it or losing money or however you want to.
Well, putting more money or making money.
Well,
it either ends up being that you strive for making money, or it ends up costing you money, or you just find that nice balance in the middle that...
And the reality is that the perfect balance is probably not possible. You're probably going to be a little bit one way or the other, which that's fine, because you're just coming closer to that sustainable goal.
Mm-hmm. We're kind of coming up to some changes on the homestead and working it through our mind and trying to figure it all. Some more changes. And, we really want... You don't want to say these will be the last time we're going through changes, because it is ever evolving.
Change is pretty much inevitable.
Yeah, but this is the starting point of setting our vision and actually documenting that, and now working from that to find out how can we best achieve that goal and still maintain doing all the aspects that we really value and want to have. So I think that's the part that we're kind of sitting at now, is our vision is sustainability, I guess.
We want to be sustainable.
Yes,
not as sustainable as
possible.
We can possibly.
And obviously that's going to be a floating goal, because we know in the next 5 years it's not really possible. But then, in that 5-year time frame, as things change and evolve and you get things set up and running properly, it doesn't mean that it may be on a trajectory of this right now, but as those 5 years go by, it starts to get more and more level with the decisions that we make to keep ourselves on track with our vision.
And I think this is a 5-year plan, a 5-year goal.
Yes.
Will we realistically make it? Probably not on everything. And will we be reliant on other inputs?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But where we can minimize it,
yeah.
That's the part for us, I think, going back to that sustainable term. Eliminating reliance where you can, but recognizing where you need to have it. Yeah, you're always going to have something, unless you can. And
making those reliance choices very wisely.
Mm-hmm.
And
having longer term goals, I guess, is part of it too. Mm-hmm. So some of the discussions and decisions that we've kind of come to at face value, they might not even make sense to people as to why we've picked it, and we hope going forward, when we kind of what would you call that, deconstruct those, to look at them a little bit closer, because we think it's worthwhile. I mean, we put a ridiculous amount of thought into this.
Yes, and if we can help anybody in the future with that's struggling with those same decisions. I mean, as people have known, for the last year of doing this channel, Chris and I have plunged into pretty much trying to do everything.
At some point or
another. And even on our homestead now, I mean, we had this vision that diversity was the key, having the most diverse.
But again, diversity is
essential, but maybe not in the extreme.
To what point? You still have to find that balance of sustainable, being sustainable.
So this is all discussion that is to come as we tell you how, or try and show you how we are going to stay on track with our vision.
Yeah, kind of looking forward to deconstructing some of it.
Yeah,
and we've had some amazing feedback from people already. So.
And we love the feedback. Keep it coming, because honestly, the comments, the discussions and things like that really do help. I mean, that's the beauty of the community, is it really can help you get through those tough patches where you just can't decide on something, and then somebody says just the right thing, and boom, you're like, it's perfect.
The overarching vision is to try to be more sustainable in our production of food. It will go more than just food, but food is the big one right now. It's not necessarily self-sufficiency, but it's finding that equilibrium balance that can keep it going hypothetically indefinitely, but if not indefinitely, for a pretty long
time, yeah.
The rest of our lifespan.
Yeah.
Anyways. And kind of in that balance too, I think that's the thing. It's finding, I use the pen, but it's finding the I don't think I can do it.
Not with that pen.
No, not with that one. But finding the balance point. And like we say, because we digressed a little bit into economics, that's part of it. So we're not necessarily, like we've said this a few times, we're kind of moving away from a model where we're trying to, not that we ever really were too much into this, but where you're tempted to try to get into an endeavor more for the economic value or gain that you could get from it versus that balance. So
So basically we're kind of going into it with that vision of sustainable and saving you money, not
long term saving
not
you money.
worrying about whether it's sustainable and making you money, just more of a sustainable and balanced.
So it should be interesting.
Yes. Hopefully it will take some of the pressure off, because it's kind of been like for a while.
For some parts.
For some parts. But yes, so stay tuned for kind of some, I guess it's not big reveals. I think most people that have been following along with us know sort of what's coming. We've done some polls. We've done some discussions on live. So I think there'll be an upcoming video looking at that info.
There is some other pieces that we haven't even talked about.
Yeah. All the things that we've discovered when searching for our vision.
So stay tuned.